On the phone with us is Senator Jenifer Branning. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. A little bit cold, but all is well here in Neshoba County.
Yes, it is. By the way, Jenifer has been reappointed the chairman of Highways and Transportation once again, and everybody got their assignments, so that's good news. And by the way, District 18 is Leake, Neshoba, and Winston counties. Am I right? I think that is correct.
That's correct, Paul, yes.
Just as a side note, what are the home folks thinking about the Marty Stewart and where that is and what it's going to do for Philadelphia in that area?
Well, I think our local people are just so excited. You know, this past summer we had the privilege and the honor of hosting Dolly Parton in the small town of Philadelphia, and I cannot tell you how many people were here in Philadelphia to not only see the show, see the excitement, see all the parties and the events that were going on surrounding the show, and just talking to our hometown vendors and shops that are located in downtown Philadelphia. I mean, it's been a game changer, and that's what it's all about, is when we're able to create an environment that businesses can grow and prosper and bring people into our state. Well, we've done something. So we're thrilled about the Marty Stewart, the Ellis Theater, and then the museum that will be upcoming.
Kudos to you guys, because of for so long, Marty Stewart has been talking to us about this, and one of his dreams. But even us home people, we had no idea. Maybe you guys did in that area. We had no idea this guy had this type of collection. I mean, I don't know if anybody else in the world has the collection that this guy has.
It's really something to see, Paul. So I encourage everyone, as we move along with the project, you've got to make plans to come to Philadelphia and see what's going on. Hats off to Marty Stewart and all the local people in the state, folks that have been involved in making this a reality.
Yeah. I do want to talk politics a little bit, but congratulations again being reappointed to the committee. The structure of the three commissioners in the PSC, we've talked about that. It draws some attention, especially in the 2024 session now that's underway. But three commissioners of who oversee the highways and transportation in Mississippi. It makes up the same way, but it's embraced politically by a large portion of people, and I think people like the three-section or the three commissioners for better representation. Is there any things but talk about changing that in the future?
There's nothing specific that I'm aware of that's ongoing at this point, but I can tell you just in general terms, the lieutenant governor created a new committee called Government Structure. And so I think that what that committee is tasked with doing is looking at different agencies all over the state, not necessarily just transportation related, but all agencies, to see if, in fact, there are things that we can do better as a state. Are there ways that we can save money? Should we be doing things differently? So I think that everything really is up for review.
Yeah. No agencies, or rather, no committees were cut from in the Rules Committee, though, when you guys started this year, did they? Was it?
Not that I'm aware of. I think all the committees stayed intact, and we added this one just because the lieutenant governor is very serious about making sure that when we are running state government, we're doing it as efficiently as we can. And I think it's wise. We need that. We need to be reviewing all areas as much as possible to make sure that we're making the taxpayer dollar stretch as far as possible.
There was a lot of progressive things done last session in the 2023, to be honest with you, and the money that's being garnered from the overspill on the lottery, the first $80 million, has been put to use. I mean, we were, what was it, now 2 years ago that we had all of this almost in an emergency basis talking about the bridges in some places just about to collapse. So we have come a long way. I mean, we're not there yet, but what's your evaluation of this?
So we have come a very long way, Paul. About 12 years ago, there was a moratorium placed on capacity work in the state, and that was because we just did not have the revenue stream necessary to keep up that program within the Department of Transportation. Then in 2018, there was a state of emergency declared with regard to our bridges. And that was mainly on the county system. And so at that point, the legislature created the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund. Since that time, and I believe the first round of funding was like $250 million in bonds, but we've continued to place money into that fund. And to date, we've spent about $500 million to improve our critical infrastructure across the state, includes the county level. So we have certainly come a long way. You couple that with the last 2 years of additional state dollars that we have placed into NDOT's budget, along with the additional federal money, and it's been a game changer in the world of transportation. It's been a game changer. And, you know, we've got to remind ourselves as state leaders that if we have a gliding transportation, robust transportation system that's modern in nature, we're going to be at a competitive advantage with our neighboring states as far as economic development projects, not to mention our local state businesses that can continue to grow and prosper, and then just public safety. So I believe we've got to keep this as a priority, but we can't just be proud of the work that we've done in the past. We have to look at going forward. We don't want all of this work done in vain. So one of my goals for this upcoming legislative session is to identify a steady revenue stream for transportation needs in the state of Mississippi.
Well, you have some ideas on that one? Because everybody's trying to do that.
Yeah, well, sure. And keep in mind that at the stage that we're in right now, is legislative session, bills are being drafted. You know, so I am working on several things. My belief right now is that the solution's got to be conservative in approach and really diverse in nature. And by that, what I mean is I think we can find a way to do this without raising taxes, but we need to look at multiple sources. There are some unencumbered dollars in our use tax revenue, the same with the gaming tax, and I feel like that we can look at those couple of sources to create a solution. So that's what I'm working on at this point. But it is so important. I think now is the time to create that. We're just in a much different position in transportation. We've come such a long way, and I'm determined and I'm laser focused to finding solutions long term for our roads and bridges in Mississippi.
Well, I think more now than ever before. We have a pretty good system, but as you said, you need to look toward the future and also just the repaving. I was looking at some stuff here. The average highway cost to build, according to the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, a new 6-lane highway, which everybody says they'd love to have in their neighborhood, of course, $7 million per mile. Now, granted, that's a 6-lane and brand new, up to $11 million in an urban area. And just to repave a mile of road is actually millions. It's ungodly the amount of money it takes to do that.
It does take it, Paul, and, you know, especially since 2020, costs have just continued to skyrocket. Another thing that we're looking at in that regard is to help the Department of Transportation deliver their services more efficiently. And shout out to Director White and his staff. They just do such a tremendous job. But, you know, studies have shown if we can bring more of their services in-house, we can save money. And to your point, it costs more to get the work done. Well, we need to be looking for ways to be more efficient. I'm working with Director White in some statutes, some language change there to give them additional options for delivery methods when they're bidding projects and so forth, cutting some red tape to help them to get the projects out sooner to make our dollars stretch. So that's some things that we're looking at. But you're totally correct. Road construction is just so costly.
Well, you have heard anything about the conditions up in the North Mississippi area as far as the ice and everything else? Because we had a couple of people say that they just wouldn't even get on the roads this morning, so bad. But in the same respect, it's very hard for any municipality to have that kind of stockpile salt and stuff needed because this happens so infrequently. But I'll ask you that. A couple of other questions when we come back with Jenifer Branning. Jenifer is Transportation Chair. What is it? Highways and Transportation in the Senate. She is the chairwoman of that again this session. Back with more coming up next. Back with Senator Jenifer Branning. This was a conversation, but it's been quite a few years ago as far as the possibility of toll roads. In some states, they have them. In Alabama, of course, as you well know, Florida. But for our part, I'm not sure if we're a lost leader state or we just don't have the population or whatever. But if you could find a way, and specifically people talk about Highway 49, if you could cut your travel time down, if you could, and that means saving gas, if it's safer, if you can, you get there quicker, people would pay a little bit more to do that. But is that totally out of the picture, or has that business model changed a little bit over the years?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Paul. Like you, I've traveled other places where their toll roads are available, and I think they're very efficient and effective for some areas. But studies have shown that I'm not sure that our state is ripe for something like that. Certainly things could change, but I just think there are other alternatives that we have to improving our infrastructure system, and those are some things that we're definitely working on and focused on for this upcoming session.
And I always ask this question because it is a pertinent question. It's not going to go away as far as the additional taxes on EVs or hybrids, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody knows how to charge these people who have these vehicles, have no earthly idea. It's got to be, I think, some type of standardization across the country. And if that's going to happen, it's got to be on the federal side of it. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's an evolving situation. I think that states are sort of not sure what to do. Some states are taking multifaceted approaches. I think that what we're doing here in our state, we're watching to see how things do evolve. We want to make sure that we are treating all of the traveling public fairly. We feel like that everyone that uses the roadways ought to be carrying their share of the burden. So, we'll see what happens in the future, but we certainly need to keep that in mind as we move forward.
One final thing here. There's a test happening now where people are not thinking about this. And I just thought about this. Not so much specifically in the southern part of the U.S., although maybe in some areas it is, but certainly in the northern part of the state, places like Iowa that's minus 15 degrees, New York, all of these places where this cold weather is the roughest we've had in a while. This test is going to be on EVs. And we're going to see how this comes up, because I think you're going to see a lot of people who say they don't work, they're cold, the batteries, how are they going to sustain this? It's going to be interesting. It's one of the stories people are not talking about, but I think when we exit this, there's going to be a lot more knowledge on how EVs and the batteries are going to hold up in extremely cold weather. Your thoughts?
I agree. I think this is going to be extremely eye-opening. I have always thought that while the concept is great, there certainly kinks to be worked out. So I think the next few days and weeks will certainly help tell that story.
Should we spend taxpayers' money putting chargers up on the highways and byways at our expense?
That's always bothered me, Paul. Certainly it's bothered me. I look at that as sort of a subsidy. But it's happened. Even with the state of Mississippi, part of the IIJA monies that came in, the federal monies, did include money for charging stations, and that was just part of what we had to do with the federal dollars. But, if I were in charge and had a say in that, that would not be something that I would put at the forefront for sure.
Are there more chargers that are on tap to be installed across the state through some of those dollars?
There are dollars available, and I'm not sure where we are on the build out, but certainly money did come down from the federal government for that purpose, for sure.
Any bills that you have authored and are ready to send to committee, or any bills that you see coming to your committee as we get back to work at 4 o'clock this afternoon?
I am working on several bills, and we are in just the very beginning stages of session, so perhaps I could come back on and talk to you in a few weeks.
Sure.
When we have a little bit more concrete information. But, I'm looking to do some things in the workforce development area. So important there. We've got to continue to ensure that our workforce is trained and ready to support the needs of the business sector. The career coaches have been so successful and popular, and I want to be part of the effort in trying to push more money in that direction. Personally, I think that nothing says, we're open for business like a trained workforce and a robust
it.
transportation system. And so those are a couple of the things that I'll be working on this session.
I'm glad
Also,
you
I
mentioned
plan
that.
to be-
Yeah.
Yes. Plan to be heavily involved in the Women's Bill of Rights bill that we expect to come up this session. You know, the Fairness Act was addressed last session. Senator Hill did a tremendous job putting that forward. The language was actually modified toward the end of the session that removed the protections in the same-sex spaces. That language we intend to bring forward this session. I think it's so
All right.
important to put
Before we
information
run,
language forward to
we'll get you back on. The computer's going to cut us off in a second or two. Listen, be careful out there. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to getting you back in the studio very soon. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Jenifer Branning, back with more coming up next.